Hello, it's Leah Piper again, your Tantra expert here at Sex Reimagined, and I'm with the beautiful
Dr. Willow Brown, your Taoist expert. Hey.
So I want to give a shout out to Living Style. They left us a grateful review on Apple. Thank you. What a gift this podcast is. You both have so much to offer, and we are all so lucky to learn from and with you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Living Style. When y'all leave a review, it makes our day. It makes our week. And it allows the show to be found by other listeners. So if you want to take the time out to leave us a review, you can make our week, our day as well.
Yeah, it takes 2 seconds and it's so helpful. And you're really going to want to leave us a review after you listen to Court Vox, he's just incredible. So he's a certified sex and intimacy coach, surrogate partner intern based in LA, but he travels all around the world. He's a guide for a very vast spectrum of individuals and those in relationships who are seeking more in their erotic and intimate lives. When it comes to human connection and sexuality, some are just beginning their journey, while others have been pursuing erotic education for years. And Court works very gently with first-timers, as well as offers extremely uncommon experiences, which you're going to hear a little bit about during our episode. For those who have a lot more experience, even some of the most well-known sex educators and change makers in this industry. So it was so much fun to interview Court and to get to know him and know what he's up to in the world. You're going to love hearing from him.
Yeah, he's got a beautiful take on the work and helping people explore. He talks a lot about the inner animal, playing with the inner animal and strength and tenderness. And we talk about photography and the power of transformation through pictures. And he's a beautiful man. He's a really, really beautiful soul. I can't wait for y'all to bask in his wisdom.
Enjoy.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Yeah, are you still with Back to the Body, Court?
I am. I'm a key member of Back to the Body.
Gotcha. So, where would you like to start? Like, what's important to you that people know about your work and your mission?
Yeah, so I'm a somatic sex and intimacy coach. Somatic means of the body. So unlike a traditional coach or therapist that mainly focuses on speaking and talking, I facilitate learning through body-based exercises and touch. And so when people come to work with me, it's a very rich experience. We have experiences that can range anywhere from learning to speak boundaries, spatial recognition. I work with people that have experienced trauma, from physical trauma all the way to relational and cultural and religious trauma to sexual trauma, and kind of parsing that out. I believe that pleasure is healing, and the path to healing doesn't have to be so strenuous. I believe that in pursuit of pleasure, shit comes up, and so we don't have to poke at it. It will come up on its own. So why not pursue it in a place of pleasure and joy?
Yeah.
That's something that in our work at Back to the Body that we're supporting women in finding for themselves, is finding their own bodies, their own paths to pleasure, really experiencing and being able to express using their voice, which is, I think, something that a lot of people have trouble with, you're regardless of the body that you're in, and also just the permission to express, the permission to explore kinks, the permission to explore things that your upbringing, your religion, your family, your culture has told you were dirty or wrong, in a place that says, yeah, we want to help you do that. We want to help you find it. We want to help you lean in and kind of help not move the obstacles, but understand the obstacles and allow them not get in the way in pursuing what your desires are. I think body image is a really big one, and also like being seen, and being seen is such an interesting dynamic, because there is this feeling of wanting to be seen, and then there's a feeling of, oh my God, I'm being seen. Mm-hmm. Right? It's very vulnerable. And, if you're going to show up as your authentic self and really be seen, there's risk involved. There's risk that somebody goes, I actually don't want that. A lot of the women we work with feel like they are too much, like their desires are too much, their body's too much. There's this feeling if they were to tip over into their true desire, their true kind of wanting, that they would be too much for their partners. And that's a big obstacle. And it's like, can you just allow yourself to be too much?
Yeah. Well, I think there's also like a process, because for a lot of people, there's a feeling of I'm too much and I have to, keep myself smaller so other people are comfortable. And then when you start to like take that mantle off and you start to free yourself from that, then you start to notice, oh, okay, the world is responding to me. I am taking up space. I have the right to take up all the space, and there can be a moment of having to then refine who you want to be in your bigness, so that you're not walking all over people either. Like, there comes a place when you finally claim your space, you can start to go into other people's space. And then you have to really start to understand spatial awareness and being able to be a reflector of, we can all take up our space. It's our right to take up our space. But also, there's energetic manners here, that we're not steamrolling other people's boundaries. We're not steamrolling other people's right to space. And so I noticed that you can't skip a stage. Like, you also need to have permission to go ahead and be so a little outrageous, so that you can learn how to then refine that yummy outrageousness in a more contained way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think, I encounter that with voice also, when people are finding their voice and, their body autonomy, all the things. It sort of has to go left of center before it can come back to a center place. And I also think, if you kind of equate this to where we are in a societal place, we're sort of in this place where marginalized people are finding their voice in a really big way. And sometimes it's a little bit crunchy, right? And, just to equate it back to this is like, when you start to find your voice and you just kind of blurt things out and you're saying things without true kind of understanding of impact. And like you're saying, it's actually a really important part of the path and the journey to be able to have that freedom and that expression. And then, people will come in and say, hey, you know what, that actually impacted me in a way that you may not have expected. And so then there begins to be like a refinement of your voice and how you want to show up in the world, so that you can show up in the world in all your bigness without trampling people. I think something that comes up a lot, and not just with men and women, but also with queer bodies, in particular queer men that I work with, is that there is this desire to be taken, right? And the desire to be taken comes from a really, I'm going to name it as a masculine energy, which is like, there's a wanting to be consumed with this wanting, with this desire. And as the person who is offering that, there needs to be a level of attunement and confidence and even connection to your own animal body, right? Because you're like, I want this carnal desire to take from your body. But then there's also this piece that's missing a lot when we reference dominance in mainstream culture, and even when we're watching porn, is that there's no care. There's often no care. And that's the piece that I find people go, ugh, I had all that and there's still something missing. Or I got what I asked for, but there still feels some sort of emptiness here.
Okay, interesting.
And that's the piece where it's like, yes, connect to your animal body, but also be aware that we are evolving conscious humans. And we also need that level of like, yes, I took from you and I loved it.
Yes.
And you loved it. And now let me hold you.
Right.
Or let me bathe you, let me caress you, let me brush your hair. Whatever that is that needs to take place as sort of this like coming back into, if I'm going to use animal body, we've just been in this ravenous, lustful, taking energy, coming back to a place of, okay, we're coming back as two people and we can laugh a little bit. Wow, who did we just become together? That was insane,
This is really interesting to me because what you're saying about this this piece around tenderness and care, I have been obsessed, like totally obsessed with these erotic novels lately. They've been like such a turn on, and a lot of it is sub dom energy, but it's written in the lens for the feminine, right? For women in particular, where you have this dom who's a man and he's very cherishing what he takes, and so you have these dynamics where like the submissive is going, okay, you can have whatever you want, but the exchange is the dom is like so cherishing of the sub,
right?
Even when they're being kind of punishing, and all the erotic play that comes into that. And so I'm really curious as your work is exploring probably some of the same principles. I think how I relate to this is sort of coming up of age, really wanting to explore my sexual energy, my sexual bigness, offering that as a precious gift. And then also not being caretaken, not being loved, not feeling like at the end of the day when we're out of the throes of passion that I matter. And so what I'm hearing you say is like we have to treat each other in probably before and after, in the aftercare of our sexual experiences, treat each other like we really matter.
And I think if we're going to go into talking about BDSM, which is something that I do coach people through, Back to the Body actually has a full retreat that is a fantasy retreat. It's very different than what we usually offer. It's called Surrender, and it is a 24/7 container where there are 3 DOMs and each DOM has 2 submissives, and it is 24/7 for 7 days of being in this fantasy BDSM container. And it's very boundaried. It's very, people's kind of, the women that come, their desires are very much spoken about. And I think what you're talking about is a discussion. Because there are people, when you sit down and you say, okay, let's talk about what it is about submission that is really hot for you. And it's like, do you want to be defiled? Do you want to be degraded? Or do you want to be a juicy bone? Or do you want to be adored? And do you want to matter? And those sometimes are the same thing, but oftentimes they're different, right? And then the question becomes, how do I adore you? How do you feel adored? What in your life, what could I do in this scene or this scenario would allow you to feel adored? And so those, in BDSM, consent is such a big piece of the pie, and really discussing what a scene looks like and kind of some of the obstacles or the things that you're kind of wanting to garner from them can be so powerful, because you're literally naming what you want. And there's still so much creativity and so much mystery in what is going to happen, even when you're mapping out kind of the touch points, right? It can, one of the biggest questions I ask people is, are there any words that you don't want to be called?
That's a really important one, because those are so triggering.
Yeah, a lot of times the answer is like, no, I don't. Can I swear on this show?
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of times people are like, no, I'm good with all the words. And I'm like, so if I called you a dumb fucking slut, you're good with that?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, whoa.
They're like,
actually,
oh, no.
Don't call me dumb.
Right. Don't call me dumb. Right, yes. But please call me a dirty little fucking slut. Yes. Please tell me how dirty and slutty I am, but don't call me stupid.
Stupid and dumb is triggering for a lot of people. And for some people, it's really hot. So, that's a big question to ask people. The other question of, if you're having a good time, what is it going to look like and sound like in your body? Well, I'm going to be moaning, I'm going to be writhing, I move a lot, I might cry. To know those things, great. If you're not having a good time, what am I going to notice in your body is physical attribution, and how is your voice going to be? Well, I'll probably go quiet if I'm not enjoying myself, and I'll probably go stiff. Great. Those are great pieces of information for me to have.
But
Right? And
that's asking people who are pretty self-aware. So are you saying that, is that a place you start even with people who don't know? Because a lot of people don't know. They're not that self-aware.
Yes, and even if the answer is I don't know, my response as a practitioner is wonderful. Let's find out.
Right on.
Yeah.
Love it.
Right? And even, if you're doing this as a practice with a partner, not a professional, to even say then, great, let's find out. I'm going to just be aware of your body. And this is also a piece that comes in when expressing animal body, is there still has to be, and I'm just going to speak from a container holder or somebody who's in top position or in the dominance role, is there still has to be 1 foot out. There still has to be 1 foot out of this kind of wildness.
Well,
Because-
first describe what animal body is, because I've heard you say that a couple times, but what is animal body?
Animal body for me is like a deep level of consciousness and embodiment that does not involve my brain.
Okay.
It's very primal, right?
It's
Very-
so primal. I'm like not in my brain. I'm
you're
not
just
thinking.
neck down.
I'm not thinking about what to do next. My body is just going with the next best right move. I am smelling. I am biting. I am just grabbing. I am doing what feels right in that
Do you
moment.
ever embody any particular animals when you're in that
Oh,
space?
yes.
Which
Yes.
ones are your favorites?
I've often been referred to as a lion.
I could see that.
A lot of like wild cat
Cats.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bear. I'm a large human, so I
Bears,
guess
cats.
those animals, bears, like lions, cheetahs, panthers, and then
But you're
it's
not thinking about that animal, right? Like it sounds like.
sometimes I am.
Sometimes
Are
you
you
do,
are you
yeah.
connecting to that archetype and then expressing it through your body, or is it
That's a
just
good
showing up
question.
organically?
For me, if I'm really in my animal body, I'm not thinking about it. But
Yeah.
somebody, a partner or someone will reflect to me, wow, felt like
Perceive it that way.
like
Yeah.
like a lion in the room. It's like great.
Well, I
And-
love that. I think that's such a great practice. Just, a pattern interrupt for a couple who's been together forever. Why don't you just get on the ground, crawl around together, and pretend like you're lions and growl and roar at each other? It's just, you can bring this in at any level.
That is something that I do with clients, whether it's helping couples reconnect or if it's someone, it's a form of play, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll even use an animal card deck, right? And I'll
that's
say, why don't
fun.
you choose an animal from this deck? And somebody will choose like a mouse, and they're like, fuck, I got a mouse?
I wanted
Yeah,
a
let's-
lion.
Yeah, we're gonna sex up mouse. Fuck
We're gonna
yeah, let's
sex
do
up the
this.
mouse. Let's see how the mouse does. And and I pull something, and it's like a bird. It's like how can you embody that animal and
Yeah.
allow it to be silly and allow it to be fun? And if you're a dog or a cat, like how does that animal move? What does it sound like? How does it smell? All those things, and how does it interact with the animal in front of you?
Yeah, what's it attracted to? And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just a way to get out of your head,
Yeah.
get back into a level of playfulness, and invite something that's really natural in that we've been so conditioned away from.
And that's one of the biggest things that probably all three of us see in our clientele is just very heady, stuck in their head all the time, thinking through it all, trying to rationalize and make sense of every
we're
little piece.
meaning-making machines. That's how our brain is wired, and that
Yes.
does keep us in our head trying to analyze and make sense
Yes.
of our feelings, our thoughts, our past, our future, our worries.
And it's hard to be really authentically in your true feeling body when you're all stuck up in the head. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I work with all bodies, in my practice is really like I can't get out of my head, and there becomes almost like this anxiety loop.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you that I'm really curious about. And I feel like, at least in my circles, we talk a lot about shame, a lot of it having to do with female shame. And I feel like what gets talked about is male shame, male sexual shame. And I'm curious to hear more men's perspective on their journey with shame. And I imagine that with your work, you're really privy to the nuances having to do with male sexual shame. I've had a story that it can't be very different from shame in general. Like, do we really have a disparity between shame according to bodies? So I'm wondering if you could illuminate some of that.
Yeah, so I just want to name that the male bodies that I work with the most are gay bodies. I work with gay men predominantly. When I work with straight men, it's predominantly in couples work. Which is different than when you're doing one-on-one. So I want to name that for your audience.
Great.
So that it's transparent. Gay men in particular, or just queer men, there's a lot of shame we deal with around our bodies. There's a lot of pressure to look a certain way. There is shame around being feminine for a lot of people. Or not being masculine enough. And there's also like a reclamation of that happening right now with the younger generation, which is incredible, of this like really embracing feminine and masculinity and in a really diverse sort of way. There is a lot of shame that comes from religion. I'll just name that, predominantly from Mormonism, Catholicism, Christianity. When I work with clients who are from Middle Eastern faiths, it's there as well.
Sure.
When I work with men of color who are from like immigrant parents, for example, there's I don't know if the right word is shame, but there is an interesting dynamic that takes place of growing up sort of in American culture while maintaining and respecting the culture of their parents, and then also the culture of queerness, which is, there's like this, if it was a Venn diagram, there's an overlap of all three, which is a lot to handle.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers to sift through with all of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers. So I think, there's also just shame in kind of being a sexual body.
Right.
In wanting sex.
Wanting
it. And just being gay.
Yes.
Right. Being not the norm or whatever.
Yeah. Or being other.
Being other and having to grow up, for many of us, in a place that we were trying to hide.
Right.
There's a book called The Velvet Rage, which was written some years ago at this point, but there is a poignant piece that he talks about, which is, while cis-het people are growing up sort of like in their adolescence, discovering themselves and discovering their sexual beings in relation to the other sex, in relation to other people, a lot of queer people are hiding. And a lot of it has to do with safety of, if I show up here as my authentic self, there's danger here, like real danger of being harmed, of being killed, whatever that is, where based on wherever you're growing up. Those are real things. And so for many people, that kind of exploration doesn't happen until your 20s or your 30s. And for some people, some of my clients, in their 40s or 50s.
Wow, yeah.
AIDS and disease has also been something that has overshadowed our community for a long time. And
That's
even
a lot of fear.
Even for men that are
stigmas.
I would say like 40s and up. Even though I'm 40, I'm going to be 43. Even though I don't have a ton of friends that passed from the virus, I came out at a time when it was still really scary to catch AIDS. There was a lot of stigma around it.
Right.
And it wasn't until my 30s that Truvada came out, and there were these drugs that really supported people from not getting it. And it's almost like, I mean, our community is so strong in terms of how we take care of ourselves now. Like the monkeypox virus came out, and it was like we just
nailed it. Get it.
Really?
Yeah.
Real fast. We took care of it as fast as we could. You know, in Los Angeles, where I live, there was lines. I mean, real long lines, 3-hour lines that people were waiting in to get the vaccination. And that was one of two. So going back a month or two later to get the second one, you know, people were dedicated to keeping our community safe, which I really, you know, it's such a huge thing.
Yeah.
So shame exists in a lot of ways in our community. I think even with straight men now, body shame is starting to become more of a thing, because I think the culture is moving in that way. You see more and more movie stars that are fit and covers of magazines. And women are sort of like, I'm tired of you being your frumpy self. Like,
right. I've heard that.
I look like this. Like, you better do something about it too.
So is it about fitness then, the body shame? Because another question I had is, it seems like especially with cisgendered men, there's cock size issues and a lot of shame around, am I big enough? Am I going to satisfy my partner enough? Is that also something that arises frequently in the queer community?
I was just going to name that. I think that's across the board. Look, I think if you asked any man, he'd be like, you know, if I could be just a little bit bigger, I would. Right? It's not like there's always
even if
that,
he's huge, he'd probably still say that,
like,
right?
Yeah.
Take another inch.
We always want more.
Yeah, always want more.
Yeah, which
think,
I struggle with this.
I know Leah's
as a woman, I'm like, I don't really love the giant cocks. Frankly, I much more prefer a smaller wand of light. I just find them more comfortable. I feel more. So, like, I'm always baffled by this obsession on cock size. And I feel like if I say, look, this is the wrong way to keep seeing this. Because really, if you can connect to energy, you can be as big as you want. But I feel like it lands on deaf ears. Like, men don't actually want to hear from me my true opinion, or they don't believe it.
So I'm going to say this about men and women relationship in terms of cock size, is that many women garner the most pleasure from clitoral stimulation in terms of like orgasm, or I'll just use the word climax instead of orgasm.
Sure.
And so, you know, if you're going to focus on anything as a male-bodied person giving pleasure to your woman, you know, focus on clitoral stimulation and don't think of that as the warm-up. That is the main act, if you will. And focusing on a blended orgasm, which would be penetration plus clitoral stimulation. And if your partner, look, there are women who have larger canals, and there are men who have larger penises. And so it's like a puzzle. There's a fit there. And then there's women that have really small canals and, you know, a more polite, we use polite cock.
That's
interesting. That is sweet.
That's Pamela Madsen, who owns Body. That's her term. But yeah, more polite cock is actually like wanted, and like you said, there's more feeling there. It doesn't hurt, right? And so I guess there's a fit. So size does matter, but not in the way that we really think it does.
How is it the same or different in queer relationships between men?
In terms of cock size?
Yeah.
You know, I think there is still that kind of desire and wanting for like giant cocks. It's really prevalent in porn, you know, to see men with really large penises or above average penises. I think in gay and queer porn too, there's a lot of emphasis on a certain body type, which kind of fuels body image issues too. And I know, you know, some really heavy duty bottoms that are like, it doesn't matter to me how big the cock is. It's a matter of how it's being used and the energy that's attached. And sometimes smaller is better, and how it could be the shape, right? And it hits the prostate in a certain way.
Right.
Again, people's anatomy is different, and so a certain size or shape of a cock might be so desirable to one person and just be like a total no for somebody else.
So as a somatic coach and healer, how do you support someone who feels really insecure about their cock size? How do you help them resolve that?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't like the term healer. I go with guide or teacher. So just wanted to name that.
Great.
Look, I think in terms of body acceptance and cock acceptance, there is this feeling of sometimes it becomes a little bit detrimental to the growth to say, like, just love yourself and just accept what you have. It's like, that's a wonderful rhetoric. And some days I'm just going to speak for my own body. Some days I'm like, God, you're a fucking stud and you are a beautiful man. And I catch glimpses of myself in the mirror and I'm like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And then other days I'm just like, I'm not feeling myself at all.
Yeah.
I need to lose 10 pounds. I need to hit harder at the gym. Like, what's wrong with you? And it comes to more of a place, can you get a little bit friendly with your body and a little more comfortable with what you have? And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with women, is that when you're embodied, if you're truly embodied, when you're having sex or you're even in your self-pleasuring practice, if you are thinking about what you were looking like in that moment, you're not embodied. You're
not in your body. That's
Yeah.
one of the
You're not in
biggest
your
thing
body.
that comes up with women there, especially they're like, I'm afraid to be on top. I don't want to be seen. I got this belly, I got that, and it's like, well, all that, when you're really in your sexual essence and really feeling it, you look sexy. Like you look gorgeous no matter what body you're
When you're
in.
in your body, you're actually extremely magnetic and attractive. It's like you feel someone in their skin and you want to get up next to it. It's just like, can I get my body next to your body?
I'm curious.
But when you are distracted with those thoughts,
Yeah.
you can't just say, just get in your body, you'll be fine. Like there's a, like you said, there are those days when you're just going, I want to be happy with myself, but I'm not.
So as a practitioner, I'm just going to name as a practitioner because it's different how I would show up or how somebody might show up with a partner, right? What I'm offering is a place to practice. And, one of the tools I use is just name it. Just name what's going on. And that could be anything, right? I feel like I'm making my grocery list right now. Great. Let's see if we can move your body in a different position and see if we can activate some sound and some breath to come back to yourself and see if we can forget about the laundry list. Great. We're going to move our body in this way. Movement is such a practical tool for recentering yourself. Right? Even as I'm sitting here with you, I've moved multiple times, right? You guys have, just to recalibrate my position, I'm recentering my focus with you. And so that's something that's similar in sex. Get on top, get on the bottom, ask to find a new position. And as women, like, there is this feeling sometimes of like, well, I'm not in charge. Yes, you are. You are active receiver, an active participant in this experience. Men want you to show up. Even if you are in a submissive role, submission is an active experience, right? And so I can't tell you, the straight men that I interact with in terms, and I'm just going to use all men, there needs to be a level of, not necessarily pushback, but a feeling of like, I'm being met here. Right?
Yeah, like some kind of resistance to know that there's someone on the other side receiving what you're giving. Yeah.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's just like, it's not that exciting.
Right.
I'm just using you as some kind of a tool to get
Well,
off.
then there's no sexual tension. It's like, a great sexual experience often has different layers of energy that's meeting itself, that's interfacing. And I think that comes with, if you're not bringing a certain amount of like tension that can be felt, not just by yourself, but by other. And if someone is willing to also bring that, it's just where it gets lost in translation is people think they don't know how. And so by creating experiences where they are in an empowered place to go, let me sort this out. How do I feel sexual tension? How do I bring that to the table when I'm encountering someone else? What's my path forward with that?
Yeah. Just to name the how, right? Because we're saying, create sexual tension. It's like, sometimes it's just there naturally. And then other times it can be made, right? And so if I'm speaking about somatic tension, it's like if I give you my hand and you give me yours and I push and your hand moves, there was no tension there. You're not meeting me, right? If I give you my hand and you push me out of the way, there was no tension there. You were not meeting me, you were fighting for power, right? But if I come with my hand and you push and you just hold that strength there and we dance in the exchange of power, in the exchange of tension and energy, wow, we've got something there, right? And that can be in our hands, it can be in our face, it can be in our mouths, it can be with our chests and our whole bodies, with our genitals, right? So this is a somatic example.
That's a great example.
Also using energetic tension, right? And actually naming it, right? Because I don't like to play games with people, right? These like actual games that, the whatever those books were in the 90s of like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And the cow is for free if you don't buy the milk, whatever that was.
Right.
I don't like that. Just name the fucking game. I'm going to tease you. I'm going to tease you. I'm going to make you want it so badly that you can taste it in your mouth. And I'm not going to give it to you until you beg for it.
See, now that's some good dirty talk right there on top. Like that's getting the brain stimulated, which, as we know, is the most important sexual organ.
Touch you. I can actually say, I am going to touch you here, but I'm actually not going to touch you. Can you feel me? I'm not going to let you touch me yet either.
Right.
I want to circle you. I want to circle you. I want to prey on your energy. How does that feel? You want that?
Okay. I have a yes. Go ahead and stand over there and then undress me from like 10 feet away, okay?
or even, you like you said, using direction and dirty talk to say like, I'm going to undress you from over here. So why don't you take off your shirt? Nope, I want you to do it slower. Oh, wow. And then going back to being adored, being praised, wow, look at your skin. It's just creating this space for sexuality and eroticism to flourish and to grow rather than, let's get to it.
Right. Let's get it done. Let's get our stress relieved, really, is what people are using sexuality for. So I can go to sleep, so I can wake up and do it all over again,
You know what? Sex can be that too. And I think...
Yeah, there's value in it, for sure.
But where it becomes monotonous is when it becomes the routine.
Yeah,
and that's the only thing on the menu, and then you're wondering why your relationship's drifting apart.
So I would love to hear from you, Court, like this differentiation between... We've been talking a lot about shame, and my understanding of shame is that it's this feeling of being bad, innately that you are bad. But can you kind of talk a little bit about guilt too? Because you touched on that in the beginning around, all the different religions and social constructs. And so there is a distinction between guilt and shame. I'm curious your take.
Yeah, so I want to name that shame can be a really powerful tool in sexuality. Guilt feels a little bit different. Guilt is like feeling like a little bit of like remorse for what you're like having what I would call like what is it called?
Like regret.
Yeah, like sex regret almost. Like I did that thing and now I feel like I regret doing it, right? That's actually really dangerous.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous, specifically for male bodies in the climate that we're in, to have experiences where there is that possibility for sex regret at the end, and there's some flip of a story or a narrative where the person is like, I didn't want that, I didn't agree to that, which is what I wish I hadn't done that. And so then it becomes you took advantage of me, as opposed to I was a willing participant, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Victim.
And
Perpetrator.
yeah, the victim role. And that's why discussion is so important, right? Agreements.
Before you get started. Yes.
Yeah, creating a really strong container. And I think, people, when I talk about this in all containers, including queer community, it's like, well, consent practices take the fun out of it. And it's like, no. It actually,
They create a healthy boundary, a healthy container, so you can have more fun within it, right?
well, that's right, exactly. So you can have more fun within it. You know what the parameters are, you know what's desired, what's not, what's available, what's not. And then holding to that. There's also something so strong about holding to that. One of the things I offer clients is erotic touch and erotic massage. In sexological bodywork, we leave our gloves on, our clothes are on, and clients can request various forms of touch, including genital touch. And so if a client says in the beginning of a session, I actually don't want that, and then halfway through they say, I changed my mind, I want that, my answer is always like, thanks so much, I love that request, and next time we'll be able to do that. But we're not doing that now because you are in this state of arousal and all of your
You are under the influence.
Yeah,
my
it's an
friend.
altered state. You got oxytocin pulsing through your brain and your body. I mean, you're on a drug there.
And that's when, afterwards, somebody might have regret of
Right.
like, oh shit, that's not what
wish
I
I had.
wanted. I said I didn't want it, right? I did something that was not in alignment with myself. And that's where trouble happens.
What dawned on me just now is like with the religious guilt stuff, it's like it may not even be what someone acted on. It's a thought that they had that they feel guilty about. It's like a betrayal of belief systems or a betrayal of a relationship if they feel aroused by something that they see or by a thought that they have, and then they're beating themselves up over feeling guilty about not having pure thoughts or
And
having
then thinking
the right
that they're
thoughts.
innately
And then
bad
that
for
could lead to
having
shame
that
of going,
thought.
why can't I stop these
Yes,
thoughts?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the type of space that I hold in all the containers that I work in is using that as erotic, as the
Yeah,
erotic.
tell us
example.
more about that. Yeah, I want to hear. How does shame really, how can you use shame
get
to your
turned on by
advantage
shame.
to open up your sexual capacity and for pleasure?
Well, for example, let's just use religion as an example. Say you were an altar boy and you actually never were molested by a pastor, but you had thoughts of being
Crushes.
taken advantage of, or thoughts of being with another altar boy, right? That is something that is shameful, and there's probably some like guilt involved in there. And if you can explore it in a way that's conscious and approach your partner or me, for example, and say, this is really hot for me, and I don't know why, and it's really problematic. And there is this train of thought with traditional therapy that's like, well, let's figure out a way to get rid of it,
Right.
right? Let's just
Let's heal you from that.
heal you, my friend, right?
Right.
My thought is like, wow, that could be really fucking hot if we, what if
Let's
we play that out?
fetishize that.
Let's
fetishize
Yes.
Let's see
get
what's
off on
there.
that.
Why? And
Yeah.
especially when somebody's like, I don't know why. Then there is some medicine in that for them to discover and explore. It's like when we go into the shadows and the darkness and the places that we like otherwise want to get away from. That's where all the chi is.
Yeah, and honestly, if you look at almost all of the very hot like fantasy play that exists, it's all transgressive. It's
Right.
all shadow, right?
Right.
Not a lot that's like You know, there's not a lot that's like,
It's
you
not
know,
real energetic and sensual, right? It's
well,
got the-
and for some people that's like a feeling that feels really good, but
yeah.
to kind of dream in that space or to
Mhm.
um, fantasize in that place, it's, you know, I'm not saying that it's not there, but it's usually not people's go-to.
Right.
You know, they're thinking about fucking their boss or their stepmom, or, you know,
Yeah.
those are not allowed, and we still want them. We still fantasize them, and they're hot because they're not allowed.
Yeah, and so then there is, how do we become whole, knowing that it's like a normalizing. I think that's the thing.
Hmm.
We don't want to take away from the naughtiness that is such a turn
Hmm.
on by like over neutralizing the whole idea, but I think this is the opportunity, is that there's freedom in that. And that we don't have to feel gross about ourselves because we have a kink or a desire or a feeling that brings us into our body that we would think or believe that people would frown upon if we ever acted on it. It's like, how can we stop making the thoughts wrong or the fantasies wrong? Because honestly, I think when we do too much of that, that's when people act out and do harm to other people.
Yeah.
That's the tricky
Yeah,
line.
when there's no outlet for the expression.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody's never done any BDSM or any kink or has, and they've been in a relationship, let's say 15, 10, 5, however long,
50
long-term
years?
relationship, like how would they even get started and like, wow, I do have this fantasy. I have been fantasizing about fucking my boss. Like, how do I bring that to this relationship? Because I feel like for so many, the fear is this is going to bring up some issues and it's just going to turn into a massive fight. That person is not going to be
Well, who's
receptive
to say it
to
needs to be brought to the
playing.
relationship?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
look,
there's stuff in my head that I don't need to bring into my marriage.
which, you know, there's for people that have been together for so long, I think the question becomes, specifically when I've worked with couples, and I have worked with quite a few couples that have been married 20, 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
and they're really committed to finding that zest with each other again, or continuing that spark, or finding something new, whatever it is. That's a beautiful place to work with couples, is we already have something great, and we just want to keep it great for the next 10 years, right? This is a practice for us, not we're broken and we're
Right.
finding the solution, right? And there are clients that come in where they're like, we haven't had sex in 3 years and we love each other and we're not sure if we can even connect erotically anymore. And so then it becomes about diving into that, and can you be vulnerable enough to speak that? And sometimes it is helpful to have a coach, because you have a third person going, actually, this is not weird, this is actually totally understandable that your wife wants this, and totally understandable that your husband is interested in this, and are you able to meet them here? And if the answer is no, then the next question I would ask is, are you willing to allow them to get this somewhere else? And that's a hard conversation to have too.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah, for a lot of couples.
And if the answer is no, I'm not, I will not share them. It's like, great, let's go back to question number 1. Are you willing to step into this, even though it's not yours, right? This is not, something that's interesting or hot for you. Are you willing for your partner to play the game for them? And if that's a no also, we're kind of at an impasse, right? There's like just a no, no, no.
I was thinking, like, what about the third option, which still may not be satisfying to the one who has a desire, but what about just, can you hold space for this desire? Can this person be safe having their desire, even if it's not fulfilled, in your presence? Can you be the safe place for this desire to be spoken, to be seen?
And sometimes that's enough, right? And sometimes there is
Sometimes it's not.
and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's just such a knowing in that person's body that I need this. I want it.
Right.
And, how I've seen that manifest a lot is sort of what we've been talking about, which is there's one person that is really wanting that taking energy from their partner. And they're like, I want to feel so adored, so hot by you. I want you to just consume me. And the other person is like, that's a lot for me.
Yeah.
And it becomes a learning both ways, right? So the person who is doing the taking and the consuming, there is a level of somatic reconditioning and permissioning that says, I'm going to allow myself to do that. In a culture that says, respect women, don't call them names, be a nice guy, be a good dad, right?
Good guy, yeah.
Be a good guy. And so there is this like conundrum. And can they exist? And the answer is yes. And there is a level of the same way that a submissive would have to surrender to all the cultural and societal messages that say, don't be submissive.
Right.
The dominant also has to be in that place of, okay, I'm going to allow myself to forget about these scripts and step into this role that's being asked of me. And that's an important distinction. It's being asked.
Okay, and this sort of follows the thread of where attunement comes into play. Because if we're going to take a moment and go off script, because the intuition and being in the moment and being in the body, something else is being called forward. Can you be malleable enough to shift and respond? Can you be in attunement with someone else's nervous system to be able to roll somewhere else?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
It's a skill.
It's a skill because it's also like, a level of attunement in yourself. If that's off, how are you going to attune and align to somebody else's energy? And, you used a word that is tricky for me, which is intuition.
Oh, okay.
And intuition, it feels like a woo-woo word for me.
Oh, interesting.
And it's not always right. A lot of times it's a projection, right? I am intuiting that you are scared right now. I'm not scared. Oh, okay. Great. So let's move on, right? Or I might say, as a practitioner, I might say, hey, I'm noticing that your body is closed. No, I'm not closed. Well, your legs are wide shut. They are clamped. Are you aware of that? Oh, no. Well, what would open feel like? If you were to show me what open would feel like, then the legs open, right? And so sometimes there is this mismatch. There's a thinking of what open, let's just use open, and what open actually looks like. And if I'm not paying attention, right, I'm like, this is going really well. I'm having a good time.
Right.
He's so hot. Or he's really hot. And I'm loving this. Meanwhile, the person's like...
Totally rigid.
And instead of checking in, right, we go, well, my intuition says everything's fine. Because everything's fine with me. But there is this feeling of like, okay, I am intuiting that something is off here. And I'm just going to make sure. Hey, I'm noticing you're not breathing. Is everything okay?
Yeah, it's more like, can I check out my intuition with you right now?
It's almost like you're using yourself as a barometer to check in with the other person's body. Like when you do have that level of attunement inside of yourself, then you can do that a lot more easily. And I think that's one of the most powerful pieces of exploring your sexuality is you have to get closer and closer to that barometer inside of yourself, that level of attunement. You know yourself more and more as you expand and explore this more and more.
But I think the shadow is you think you know yourself so well that you know more than other. And so then we end up in an arrogant way assuming and projecting, since we know ourselves so well, that I know more than you know about your own body, or what you're feeling, or what you're sensing, or what you want, or what your desire is, or what closing and opening means to you. I think that's some of the spiritual arrogance, or sexual arrogance we all have to increase our awareness of if it's showing up and causing conflict in our life.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to kind of the topic that we were talking about earlier, which is, kind of animal body and dominance versus care and kind of human advanced consciousness, which is, okay, I am in my animal body and I am taking you. And then I'm also noticing that you're not giving me anything back. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna come back to my human consciousness here and say, let's be a little more gentle for a minute, right? Let's ebb and flow here. Just checking in with you. How you doing? You good? Yeah, I love that. I love when you bite my neck and all those things. Great, let's do it again, right? Or, no, I need a break. I'm feeling like I'm feeling a little claustrophobic. I need you to come off my body a little bit. Awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And there's also a languaging that I'm using that I want people to recognize, which is not, well, fuck you. Taking it personally. It's more like acknowledging what the person has said and being like, cool, I appreciate that. I can give you some space.
Yeah.
I could use a little breather. Do you mind if we still make out? Can I still touch you? Or do you need full space from me? Right?
Yeah.
It's checking in, offering something that I want as something that keeps our connection alive while honoring the person's request.
Yeah, and so I think an added distinction to that is to go, okay, someone makes that request, and it's also okay to feel that initial lurch, did I do something wrong? Where you have the urge to be defensive, but you catch it, and you get curious and grateful instead. It's oh, thank you for saying what you need. It's hard for me to hear it, but thank you. I want to challenge that in myself.
And you just named something which is interesting too, is oof, that was challenging for me.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's so hard for me to hear you say that.
Yeah.
I really want to be close to you. I thought I was doing all the right things, and I get it.
Yeah.
And
there's a grace that can happen on both sides,
on each other.
And just
that's advanced practice.
Yeah, it is.
I might go, yep, we had a great experience, and I'm fully aware of all the things that I brought to the table and all of my conscious and I wasn't met there, and I don't know that I'm willing to go back to that.
Right.
And so it becomes a choice of where I place my energy.
I know that a lot of people do feel somewhat unmet, long to have more experiences with people who want to swim in the deep end, and often feel like they're dragging people along with them and meeting resistance. And so one of the things that I've done to get around that in my life, and being someone who felt really alone and lonely and desiring to swim in the deep end and feeling like I was never finding it, is switching my attention from what I'm not getting to what I am getting. How I am being met versus, agonizing over how I'm not being met. And that's how I actually started to see men differently too. And then that carried on to seeing women differently, which is if I put my attention on their greatness, what I get is their greatness. If I'm putting my attention on what they're not doing right, what I'm going to get is a continuation of what I feel like they're doing wrong. And so where we put our attention, I think, can really transform our relationships. And what that can bring out in the other changes too. Because people blossom under approval.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback loop is really important. To give praise, just noticing in my own partner, praise is a love language of his. And when I give praise, he does things more for me. Just the receiving of the praise is fuel to do more of it. And recognizing that praise for me actually is not one of my love languages.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. There's a lot of people don't need that. In fact, it can actually be triggering sometimes of feeling like someone is trying to coax them or manipulate them, or you don't need to brush me up.
What is your love language, Court?
Space is one of my love languages.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
I love gifts.
Uh-huh.
But they're very specific gifts. I'm not
Right.
into gifts for just the sake of gifts. They have to be very, very poignant gifts.
They have to
I don't
really be
Personal.
thoughtful about you
Nothing.
and what you would like.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are
Yeah.
so intrigued by how they can work with you
Yeah,
and
so I work in immersion only. So people come to work with me for 3 days minimum at a time. Sometimes I work with clients up to 5 days. And then when I work with extended team through Back to the Body, we work up to 8 days with private clients. I work with women and female identifying bodies with a company called Back to the Body, which is retreats for women. We do retreats all over the world. And I also work with GBTQ men in workshops and retreats, lots in LA and New York, San Francisco.
Great.
And my retreats kind of vary, but it's usually like 1 to 2 a year.
do couples come to that, or is it just individuals?
I'm not focusing on couple dynamics. Couples do come to work with me privately. And in my workshops,
Right,
couples
right.
come and they're having their own experience, but we're not talking about couple dynamics.
I was looking over your website, and I know with Back to the Body is the photographer and having the photo shoots.
Yeah.
I just think that's a really cool part of the curriculum. It sounds like. Is there anything you want to say
Yeah.
about the power of that?
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is being seen. And I'll just talk a little bit about my evolution of photography. I've been being photographed for a long time. I started on Instagram as more of a fashion thing. My background is in lifestyle content. I worked for Yahoo and Disney in kind of lifestyle genres. And I kind of transitioned my Instagram as I transitioned as a human. And photographers used to reach out to me to photograph me as part of their portfolio. And so I did that for a long time. And then I kind of got into this place where I was like, I really love being seen through the lens of someone else. And now I want to be more of the author of my own photographs. And so when I work with photographers now, I come with really clear direction about how I want to be shot. A really common theme with photographers, they want to see me in this very stoic kind of Viking look, which
Yeah,
Right.
that looks like it comes natural to you.
it's fine. And it's also like,
Yeah.
it doesn't represent me as a whole person.
Yeah.
Bring
And
more
so
of your
I love to
essence
move
forward.
and show how I move and photograph. So finding photographers, that's been an evolution for me in kind of reclaiming my own image. And so I think for some people, just being photographed in eroticism or being photographed in their natural body with no clothes on or in sexy clothes or whatever that
Yes.
is really new.
Yeah, there's something so deep that comes forward, especially when you see those
Yes.
pictures later. You're like,
Yes.
oh my God, that's me. Wow.
Right. It's confrontational, emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the photographers that we work with, they're all body positive, sex positive, and their process is maybe different than a traditional photographer, which is they sit with you and go through the photos and say,
Yeah.
God, look at the line of your
Yeah,
back
that's
here.
so healing.
And look
Cool.
at the fullness of your ass, and wow, can you see that? It's a total process as opposed to, the process, just a photo shoot, right?
I think it just has so much potential to be so transformative, and
Definitely.
yeah, I think it's a really, really neat thing that you guys include in your work. So I wanted to just kind of highlight that. And I also, would you talk about Squirm? Am I saying it right?
Yes.
Yes.
Plugging everything at the end. Squirm is my sensation toy company. Right now we have a sensation exploratory box that has some claws and some fur gloves and a pinwheel and a silk mask. So really like dealing with sensory deprivation and trust and play and different sensations that you may never felt in your body before.
Cool. Yeah. I know. I have so many more questions.
Love it.
I'm going to. All right.
Yes, you go enjoy those hot springs.
right,
Though,
you will.
and we'll see you soon.
Yes. Have a great time in the jungle.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Oh, baby. It's dish hour.
his embodiment of what he's up to as well. You can really feel that he walks his talk, and I could feel like what an incredible space holder he is for any level of erotic exploration that somebody is ready for.
I particularly liked his description of like knowing or showing up and meeting somebody else. Like when we were talking about like the sexual tension and bringing the hands together and bringing the bodies together, or even bringing the tension in from across a room. Yeah. I think he really illustrated well an invitation, an opportunity, and what it actually feels like to meet, to bring tension to someone else's tension so that you can encounter somebody else. And it's a really important aspect to being a good lover. And to knowing how to show up in your body and in sexuality.
Yeah, there needs to be some level of pushback and resistance. Sexual chemistry. Chemistry is like a reaction from one thing to another thing. Leah and I really tout this as spiritual sexuality, and spirituality is very amazing and important, but sometimes like in the Buddhist or, even in the Taoist realm, we're always looking for this equanimity where there is not a lot of reaction, and that can just get downright boring inside of sexuality. Yeah. So you've got to have some chemical reaction at play. And there's ways to create that, even if you don't feel like you have that with a partner that you've been with for a long time or even somebody new. But you can learn how to make that chemistry a reality inside of any relationship that you choose to, which really opens up a lot of possibilities.
We also had like a lot of technical mishaps today.
Yes, we did.
Oh my God.
We were like, Jesus God damn it, we're going to get this recording, Court. Yeah. Oh, man. Between the rain and the internet and the
lighting, and then you not being recorded because you were a producer instead of a guest on the show. So like Willow actually had a lot of really beautiful things to say that didn't get recorded, but she eventually got on. And we didn't even realize. I mean, actually, you realize, like, where's the red dot? Like, shouldn't I have a red dot on my screen? And I'm like, well, looks like everything's okay. I'm so glad that I knew later that when you're labeled a producer, it doesn't record you, which is dumb. But
Thank
it
God
didn't.
Leah's a mastermind at this technology stuff. She's keeping an eye out for our recordings getting recorded so you all could learn about these amazing people in the world, like Court.
Yeah. There is a little bit of a learning curve to podcasting, folks. But we're sorting it out. And then, we're done with the interview, and I just mean to, like, press stop the record so we can properly thank Court and no, like,
I just kicked us all off instead.
No, I did. I thought I was
did?
the one. Yeah.
I think I did. Anyway, Court, we didn't get to say goodbye to you properly, but we really loved you. We want to have you back on the show for sure.
Court seems like the type of person who's really focused on keeping people in the body.
Yes, absolutely. He's a very embodied, attuned practitioner.
Yeah. I was grateful that he brought up his thoughts about intuition, when that
was
word
interesting.
came up.
Yeah,
that was really interesting. I actually got a lot of value because I haven't really thought through that whole process where people can really project their intuition on you and think that they know something and use intuition as sort of like an almighty truth.
Well, and I think that is the differentiation between intuition and projection.
Okay.
It's like, am I just projecting because that's what I want? I feel like oftentimes intuition is not what we emotionally want. It's the opposite, and we don't listen to it because we let our emotions override our intuition. And I think intuition can come from, your third eye center. It can come from your heart, and it can come from your pussy too, or your cock.
Yeah.
It can come from different places inside of your body, and it really does come from that having an attunement to what we talk about a lot, Leah, which is like, am I open? Or close? Is my nervous system expanding to that concept, idea, thought, person? Or is it closing to that possibility?
Yeah, so I feel like he modeled really well, if you're feeling intuition, how to ask. I'm noticing that you seem closed. Is that true? Right. And I'm wondering if you felt open, how would your body position change? You know,
Yes.
I thought that those were really great. I thought he had some really wonderful questions.
He did. And he brought it into like facts. Like, I'm noticing you're not breathing very deeply. Like, you're not getting the length of a full breath, or your legs are closed, you know? So it's like actually facts around what is happening in the moment with that person's body that is attuning you to this idea or this concept or this intuition that the person is feeling closed and not enjoying themselves.
And you know, it's interesting. Like, sometimes I think I've just been in California too long.
I definitely have been in California too long. My whole fucking life and many generations.
You are a California girl, the quintessential California girl, I might add.
SoCal, baby.
And he was saying it's like a woo-woo word. And I was going, I guess some people would think intuition is a woo-woo word. That surprised me for half a minute until I thought about it. I was like, yeah, like I could see my brother or cousin or somebody going, intuition, you know.
You know the word my brothers are always like, if you say that word one more time, it's
what?
Energy. I'm like, I'm a fucking acupuncturist. What are you going to do? I'm a Chinese medicine doctor. I'm looking for energy all the time. I'm reading energy. I'm attuned to energy. What?
Yeah.
Come on.
And you know what? Like, I just have to say, like, I know the people who actually listen to The Dish. If you listen to The Dish, please tell us in the comments and the reviews what woo-woo word you just gets on your nerves. You know, like what's the word that just like totally is annoying to you?
I want to hear it too.
Yeah, I hope you guys like the episode. Just in closing, I really appreciated the conversation regarding men's shame, especially what the queer community goes through in terms of shame. It's something that I am really interested in wanting to understand at a deeper level. And I feel like we just got to the surface of that particular topic. Like, I'm really aware of the privilege that I've lived. I haven't had to feel that my sexuality could kill me. You know, if it was told in the wrong company, if it was expressed in the wrong company, my heart feels crushed by that. Yeah, you know,
it is a very, very real thing for the queer community that because of this like quote unquote normal versus not normal reality that we're still just swimming in, you know, we're all one tribe. We're all human souls. We're all on this planet. I don't even understand, like, you know, aliens. When people are like, oh, they're an illegal alien. I'm like, how could they be an illegal alien? They're a human being on the planet. Like, it's just, we're all in this together. Let's be kind to each other. Yeah. We don't know what the other person's going through. So just have more compassion. And we're in the year of the bunny rabbit. So this is a year of compassion and gentleness and sweetness and softness and rest. Deep rest.
Yeah, and just to sort of, I guess what I'm feeling humbled by is just taking for granted the fact that I haven't had to experience that, and other people have lived most of their life with the weight of that somewhere in their nervous system. And so I was touched by that and just wanted to say, thanks, Court.
Thanks, Court.
Yeah. Love, 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 y'all.
Thanks for tuning in. Leah Piper is a tantric sex master coach and a positive psychology facilitator. Dr. Willow Brown is both a Chinese and functional medicine doctor and a Taoist sexology teacher. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.